Miami broke open the Latin music market, while New York, home to almost 2 million Latinos, became for producers a hothouse of talent.
There was always music. You start walking down the block and you hear pop music at its best, the 80s. And then it was like salsa, and then you had jazz, and then you had hip hop.
Enticed by the rich musical soundscape, producer Sergio George aimed to revive salsa, languishing since its heyday in the 1970s, remaking it for a new generation, raised on rock and roll, R&B, and hip hop.
There's no longer a hardcore salsero out there in a big way, not like before. So I do have to try to get people who aren't salsa fans by toning it down a little bit, lyrically, musically, where they can understand it.
I can't get no sleep. Your touch is making me weak.
Sergio George set his sights on a girl from the South Bronx, Linda Caballero, known as La India.
What was really popular at the time was freestyle music. But I wasn't really happy because I felt like I really needed the other side. I really needed to cross over to my people.
India gave up a promising career as a pop singer to embrace her Puerto Rican roots. Her first hit, Dicen que soy, They Say I Am, was an early example of George's pop-inflected salsa. George went on to build on their success, pairing La India in a duet with another young Puerto Rican artist, Mark Anthony. Born in East Harlem in 1968, Mark Anthony spent his youth around New York's housing projects. Like India, he found success in freestyle and then switched to salsa. His first Spanish album, Otra Nota, On a Different Note, had been produced by Sergio George.
The Mark Anthony sound was a combination of the hard-edge New York sound with the romantic stuff, but with a more of a pop R&B edge that these young artists like La India and Mark had from the streets.
You the man, buddy.
Let's take it one more time.
We're gonna take it again.
There was a sense of competition where they wanted to outdo each other, and it was a fun competition. It wasn't like an animosity. It was like, put the track, I'm gonna show her, I'm gonna show him, that kind of thing.
Desde una montaña alta, alta como las estrellas. You don't like that?
A tu lado, que nuestro amor es eterno.
That's as good as it gets. En un llano tan inmenso como el cielo, voy a podar un jardín para que duerma tu cuerpo. En un mar espeso y ancho, más ancho que el universo.
Vivir lo nuestro, to live our love, united two of Latin music's most promising new voices.
Un universo negro como el ébano más puro. Azul de blanco nuestro amor para el futuro. En una noche cerrada voy a detener el tiempo para soñar a tu lado que nuestro amor.
I was more famous than him at the time.
Y volar, volar tan lejos.
Mark was skinny like a pasta, and I was chunky like a meatball. So we were like a spaghetti and meatball, you know, looking at each other. We're like, yeah, all right, baby, let's sing.
Tan libres como el viento. Y vivir, vivir lo nuestro.
Y amarnos hasta quedar sin aliento.
The vocal interpretation that they brought to the table, nobody really had heard up to that point. And those kinds of riffs, that kind of energy and power going into a track.
Se oponga.
Que tú y yo nos amemos.
It's really amazing how much you know, a song could do for you. Vivino Nuestro just completely took us to a different level. And from there on, we never had to look back.
Mark Anthony and La India spearheaded a salsa revival that brought Latinos and non-Latinos to dance floors across America. La India became a legend to Latinos everywhere.
I was just hanging around with the big guys. And whenever someone would say something about me, I would either get too sensitive and cry, or I would knock them out and come out in the newspaper the next day. And I was considered very controversial.
India is one of the most fascinating voices that I ever heard. But I think those rhythms, those sounds are more narrow than the pop rhythms of Latin music. Certainly doing those rhythms with English, you know, really wouldn't work.
Mark Anthony's career took off. Honored with a Grammy for his album Contra la Corriente, Against the Tide, he would become the biggest-selling salsa performer of all time.
He is just a fabulous singer. He also happens to be incredibly charismatic on stage, a very sexy guy, even though he's not great looking, but very sexy, very charismatic.
He was starring in Paul Simon's Broadway musical The Cape Man in 1998, when he came to the attention of Tommy Mottola.
I just was completely infatuated with his whole sound, aura, and this golden voice.
Tommy Mottola saw in Mark Anthony mass appeal beyond the world of salsa and signed him to his label. They began working on an English-language album, but another artist was a few steps ahead.